Hello, all. This is Nicole from the My Inner Therapist podcast, and I am coming to you today in healing mode. I am in what I pray is the last stage of this flu that has literally just laid me out for weeks. So full disclaimer with my voice, it fades in and out. Um, and I will attempt to manage that without hacking into the mic. I've got some little tea here to help me through that process. So just hang in there with me as we talk about a topic that I think is very appropriate for this time of the year. We are headed into New Year's Eve tomorrow. And, everybody likes to look at New Year's Eve as an opportunity for new beginnings and to kind of reinvent themselves and to, enter into a transitional phase where we start to become more of our idealized version of who we want to be in our lives. And so I thought that it would be a really great time to talk about reviving your career, because some people are unhappy or burnt out or looking for a different experience and opportunity when it comes to their career. And we don't often talk about what that looks like, especially in the field for helping professions. So this is actually specifically geared towards those who are in the helping profession, especially social workers, because that is my background, and I feel like I have a bit of some little inside scoop on what that experience is like. So if you are a social worker, if you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, if you're in healthcare, if you're in the criminal justice field, social justice, if your job is about helping people and you have found yourself in a place and a space of not necessarily loving your job, not knowing if this is something you want to do long term, really being burnt out, being dissatisfied, being confused, not knowing what your next step is, I am going to share with you 5 of my strategies for finding and creating meaningful work opportunities. Have to look at my notes. So this is really I want to just share with you 5 of the strategies that I personally employed as far as transitioning and changing my career, but also just how I coach others when it comes to making that transition or making some kind of change when it comes to their career. And that usually is about, I'd say the motivator that I think are pretty common with people that I work with is that they're just done. They're just burnt out because this field requires so much. It requires you to give so much of yourself. And because we get so conditioned to do that, we really stop taking care of ourselves. We stop our own personal development. We really don't know our worth anymore and our value. And so I find that a lot of people who are in the helping profession, especially social workers, really struggle with being in a job where they don't feel valued, they don't feel like they're earning enough money, or it's just a constant drain on them. It's an emotional drain because of just all of the challenges that come with the work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about 5 different strategies that you can use to find and create work opportunities that are meaningful to you and at the same time meet your financial goals and meet your needs. And we're going to go ahead and dive into number 1. And I made this number 1 tea break. Okay, I can feel it. I can feel it getting a little wobbly. So I made this number 1 because I think it's the most common. I think this seems more like common sense, but I want to take it to a new level. And that's about elevating your skills and your knowledge. And I think what most people think of when they're talking about elevating their skills and their knowledge is about going back to school. That seems to be the most common response to how am I going to take myself to the next level, is to go back to school. And I think going back to school is a great option. The drawback to going back to school, of course, is the cost, the expense, and the time of going back to school. So you really have to be able to kind of map out if this is something that is financially feasible for you and if the investment of time is worth it. And I think it really truly depends on what you're going back to school to learn, if it is going to move you closer to doing work that's meaningful for you, or if it's really going to be able to elevate you to a level where people in the field recognize you now as being an expert or having a certain skill set that now puts you in a position of being able to earn more money. Maybe you carry a particular title. If those are the things that are important to you and those are the things that you're seeking, then going back to school is an option. But there are other options that we don't really talk about or explore much. And I want to make note of them because I think they're fantastic options. So the first one is, I'm going to take another tea break. We'll get through this, I promise. So one of the other options that you have when it comes to elevating your skill is going and getting specialized certifications. And you can do this through certain accredited boards. You can do this through going back to school and going to get your continuing education units. And what we often think is that we have to have a degree to move us to the next level. When in reality, what we really need is we need to have some type of record that we have taken some additional training, we've earned us some additional education, but it's really about how we applied that information into our work. That's the most important piece. And I think so often we're like, okay, I got my CEUs, I have this information, now I want to see where that takes me. What a lot of employers are looking for is, well, what did you do with that information? How did you then use what you learned to move yourself into the next level? And I think that that's the piece that we often forget about. So when you're thinking about, okay, where do I want to go? What is it that I want to do in my career? You really have to decide time-wise what you're considering, investment-wise, what are your funds like? What are you able to afford as far as your options go? And then also too, what type of skill do you think that you need to do the job that you want to find meaningful work, and getting really clear about that so that you narrow down your options and you're not going back to school to get a degree that's not going to serve you, or you go get a degree, you spend money and you get an additional degree and you get into this new field and you realize you don't like it, or it's not for you, or it's just as challenging as the field that you left. And I've worked with people who have been in social work and who have gone back to school and maybe got their master's in public health, or some go back and get their nursing degree, and then they go into a hospital setting and they're like, this is just like my old job. This is intense. It's a lot of stress. And so you just have to be really clear about what it is that you want out of your work. Before we move on to number 2, I have to mention self-education, because it's I think the piece when it comes to elevating your skills and your knowledge, I think it's the piece that we don't really think about, because when your head is down and you're just trying to survive at your job and you're working and you come home and you're exhausted, the world kind of passes you by. And what I realized when I slowed down and started really investing time in my own personal development and professional development was that there is a whole new world when it comes to self-education. There are so many different platforms where you can go and learn skills through educational institutions that are at a low cost, and some are just free, and it's quality information. There are a lot of universities who are offering courses that you can take online that are low cost, and some of them are even free. And so really it's just a matter of going and doing research. You don't necessarily have to go back and get a degree. You can find a way to get self-educated, whether you decide to go and do continuing education units or whether you decide to go and find a free course. You just need to make sure that you are very clear on what it is that you want to do, what you see yourself doing in the future, so that you research and find courses that align with that. Okay, so moving on to number 2, because we don't have a whole lot of time with my voice. Number 2 is self-assessment. This is crucial. I think we all skip this strategy when it comes to finding work that we love doing or finding work that's meaningful to us. And we're so driven by finance and fear, which is, what I typically find most of the people that I work with we're driven by finances and fear. And I know that that's what it was for me as well. I was really looking at the money piece, and then I was also looking at being broke. Like that was my fears. Like I can't work for a certain amount because I need to make money, because I have bills to pay and I can't be broke. So that becomes kind of the driving force behind our job research. And then if for anybody who's done extensive job research, you go out there and you start seeing what some of the compensation is for the jobs that are so require so much of your talents and skills. Like you're bringing everything to the table and you feel like you're delivering all that you have, and yet you don't feel like you're compensated for it. You don't feel like your value is being acknowledged, and you feel like you're being taken advantage of, and you're not alone. I think that's really common. I think a lot of people are feeling that way in the work that they do. And so it becomes really important to understand what your real motivators are. And while money is important, it's also really important to know what and I call it your own professional mission statement and your professional values. Because so often what happens is we find ourselves being employed with an organization or an agency that has their own set of values and a mission that doesn't even align with our own. I know I've had this happen where I've worked for an organization that didn't necessarily believe in transparency, was not while we were doing work to empower the community, there was this hierarchy of power within the organization, this culture that we were all lucky to have our jobs. And that's very disempowering to work in that kind of environment. And so what happens is you have this internal conflict because you're although you might really like the work that you're doing, you're actually doing it in an environment that is in complete contradiction with the things that are most important to you. And this shows up in the form of burnout, stress, not wanting to get out of bed in the morning and go into your job. You may find yourself commiserating with other your peers at work and just getting together on break and talking all kind of mess about your job and what you guys don't like. And believe me, I've done that. We called it therapy. We all got together and we just talked about the things that we didn't like. And you really kind of feed that, you give it energy, and that becomes the thing that connects you to other people. And unfortunately, it also becomes the thing that keeps you stuck. So you have to be very mindful about what is important to you. And yes, and we'll talk about these in future podcasts, because money, definitely, you need to know your value. But you also really need to know your values, and you need to know your beliefs and what type of work you want to do, what type of employer you want to work for, what type of culture really empowers you and motivates you and drives you to be successful and to be able to serve others and meet these really kind of high complex needs of other people, but still be able to maintain your own sense of self and your own center. So you need to know those things, and that requires you doing a self-assessment. That requires you getting very real about what's important to you. And that's the piece that we all skip. We all get kind of caught up in like, I need to get a job. I need to start my research. I need to go on Indeed. I need to put my resume in. And we find ourselves bouncing from what seems like the same job that we just had in just a different building, different faces. And if you find yourself having this chronic work history of doing the same type of work and being, feeling the same type of way where you're dissatisfied, that's because you really need to do a self-assessment and figure out what is most important to you. And then that becomes your framework, that becomes your blueprint for your search. And you don't search outside of it. You get very committed to what's important to you, and you get ultra focused so that your sites, you're only able to see those things that line up with what's most important to you. And that takes us right into number 3, which is mindset. Mindset really is the thing that develops and becomes very clear after you do a self-assessment. So your mindset is really your set of beliefs. It's your perspective. It's your attitude. How do you feel about your job? How do you feel about the people you work with? If you are aware of your mindset and your perception about your work and what that means to you, or the meaning that you've attached to it, when you become aware of that, you can see how your mindset often will influence your choices and your decisions. So the best example I can give you is in a search that I did early on when I was looking for management opportunities. Was to, my mindset was that I wanted to, let me change that. My mindset was that I had to limit my search to certain organizations like nonprofits, or my background having been working at a county agency. So I was looking kind of at government opportunities. So because of my belief about where my skills would best be utilized, I created this limitation of really focusing on organizations that were what I thought were aligned with what was of interest to me, and that was totally based on my past work experience. And so my mindset then became, okay, I'm going to look at these particular organizations and agencies, but what we don't realize, what is kind of happening at the subconscious level, is that all of the negative experiences that we may have had in those work experiences, we take that with us in our search. We take that with us to our new employer. We often are leaving a job because we've been dissatisfied. And that experience, unfortunately, gets very attached to that kind of work. So if you're going and doing that kind of work elsewhere, there is really a good chance of you having the same experience there if you have the same mindset. So we have to really learn how to shift our mindset and do so in a way where we are either giving ourselves the opportunity to create new beliefs around this new job or this new opportunity, to go in and allow our perspective to develop based on this new experience, not on a past one. And that's not easy. And like I said, because most of the time we're carrying all of this with us in a very subconscious way. So as you consider, if you're considering, I really want to kind of change the game. I want to change things up. The work that I've been doing, I can't continue to do it anymore. I know for me, what ended up happening is I would look at other opportunities, and then I start to doubt myself. I start to question myself, like, well, that's not the work I've done. That's not my experience. They're going to see my resume and that's not going to match up. So they'll never consider me for this. This is not the sector that I've worked in. And so we basically talk ourselves out of trying something new or going and creating new opportunities for ourselves. So the mindset is so important. It really is the thing that's going to dictate what decisions we make, what organizations we choose to apply with, and also too, just how you go about the whole recruitment process, your resume, what your cover letter looks like, when you go in for the interview, what you say in the interview. T-Mobile. Our mindset is going to influence all of that. So it's very, very important that you get that in check. Number four is about seeking opportunities based on where you want to go instead of where you've been. And I mentioned this before in talking about strategy number 3. Strategy number 4 is about moving forward. It's about stepping out of our past and moving into the future. And that's a hard transition to do. It's easier. It really is easier on paper than it is to emotionally put ourselves in this place of transitioning into the future, because there's so much uncertainty tied to the future. We don't know what to expect. Our brain is always trying to predict what's going to happen. And unfortunately, when it's trying to make that prediction, it's looking at the past as its source, its evidence for determining what's going to happen. And so what we do is we create our resume and we write a cover letter based on everything that we've done in the past. That's, I think, traditional. I think it's very common. I think it's what most people do. And if you are looking to do something new, if you're looking to do something where you're being elevated, if you're moving from direct services to management, if you're moving from, say, child welfare into healthcare, you are going to have to find a way to reframe your past so that it aligns with what you need, what you want your future to be. And that means that you are going to have to repackage your skills, all these transferable skills that you've acquired over time. You're going to have to repackage those in a way that shows that, yes, I've had this tremendous amount of experience in my past, and this is how it's going to show up in my future. This is how, as an employee or worker or a manager, contractor, I really thought I was going to make it through the whole time without coughing. Anyway, any work model that you choose to go into, you need to shape that. You need to decide what that looks like. And that means that you've got to do some packaging of yourself and of your skills, and you've got to package your past so that it actually will help you to predict your future. And I know that seems like how do you do that? Well, that's the whole reason that we're having these conversations and talking. That's the whole reason that I have the Learning Hub over at my website, is to help people make that transition to learn the skills of how you package yourself, of how you brand yourself, how you reframe your past, what cover letters and resumes look like in the 21st century when you're doing a job search, because it's different now. It's so different from when I think I first entered the workforce, and it's an entirely different experience. Yet I feel like what's happening in most of the curriculums in schools, especially I think the School of Social Work and getting your master's, is that we are still we're training and educating social workers based off of our traditional outdated curriculum. And I don't necessarily agree that it's preparing workers for the future. And that's really a big motivator for why I got started in doing this kind of career counseling and providing this kind of educational and emotional support, because frankly, I didn't have it. I didn't have it when I needed it. And I know how challenging it was for me to transition and move into these different areas of work. And now that I understand what that's like, I just want to help other people to be able to do the same. And that brings us to number 5, which is about creating opportunities for yourself. We are conditioned to believe that we need to limit ourselves to what's out there and available based on what's showing up on these job search boards. And then we go and do the standard, resume and apply. And it's limiting, right? It really reduces your options, but it also may cut you off from being able to find meaningful work, of being able to do the things that either bring in your interest and your passion, that are more in alignment with your mission and your values. And to do that, to create something that you're really going to find meaningful, you have to be creative. And that means that you may have to create the opportunity yourself. And that's about going out and really being your own PR. That's about going and creating a network. It's about going out and, rather than sitting and sending a resume, it's about going and visiting these organizations or these corporations or these places where you really love to work and learning more about them. That means maybe you need to do some research. You need to start to understand the company and the culture more. And you need to find a way, you need to find your in. If you know what kind of work you want to do and you have an ideal company that you want to work for, you got to find your in. You got to package and brand yourself in a way that's going to help them see the benefit of you working there, of you being an employee, or however, whatever capacity you're working there. You need to make that happen. You can't sit and wait for your dream job to show up. That's essentially what number 5 is. It was a very long roundabout way of explaining it, but number 5 is you cannot sit and wait for your meaningful, well-paid job to show up. You are going to have to go out and you're going to have to find it, and you're not going to be able to do it in kind of the traditional way that we've done job searches. It has changed tremendously, and which is exciting though. I honestly think that's exciting because a whole new world of opportunity is opened up. And I really want to kind of end on that note because I think sometimes it can feel really overwhelming to think about going and whether you're changing careers, or I know for me when it was about moving into management, I was really overwhelmed by that. And there were times I questioned myself and I doubted myself. And now that I'm kind of on the other side of things, I'm realizing like how much potential there is out there. The possibilities have just expanded so much. And I've held jobs I never even knew existed. At some point, I became a social worker writer. I didn't know that that was a job. And I wouldn't have known that was a job if I hadn't take risk and if I hadn't have gone out there and just done some unconventional strategies to be able to find work that I really enjoyed and that I loved. And so I want to be able to help you to do the same, because I'm an advocate for social workers all around the world. I am also just an advocate and supporter of anybody who's in the helping profession, because I know that it's challenging work, but it is also desperately needed. Like, this workforce is vital to communities and the emotional wellness and physical wellness of people. And we are undervalued and we're often not appreciated, and that needs to change. And we're going to do it. I need your help. Okay, so please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast as well, so you get automatically, whatever app you listen to your podcast in, this will automatically download and you can listen to it at your leisure. Be sure to go to myinnertherapist.com and visit the Learning Hub. And I have articles over there and videos over there. I'm really building up the library as soon as I can get my voice back and get my mind straight. I'm really building up the library with just some good, solid information, and know that this is coming from a place of I'm learning with you. I don't know everything. I'm sharing what I've learned in my journey. But as we move forward, I'm going to be learning that new stuff right along with you and then sharing that on the Learning Hub. So please make sure to check in regularly. A good way to know what's going down at the Learning Hub is to subscribe to my newsletter. My newsletter is really where I make all my announcements. As I'm developing these new courses, I will be announcing courses as they get released so that you can sign up and take courses. And also when I do my live calls, I send out invitations for people to register and sign up for the live free call, where we just talk about topics that are affecting us in the workforce, and also just, sometimes just supporting each other, emotional support, and I'm answering questions as well. So when you subscribe to the newsletter, that's how you get notified about when that meeting is being held, and you get to register and sign up for free. And it's limited in size, so you got to make sure that you are on top of it and find out when that's going down. Okay, so that's it. I made it through. Only one cough. I still have a little bit of tea left. But I thank you for joining me, and I hope that you continue to come back and help me, help you. I really think that it's a time for change when it comes to being a helping professional. I think that we need to really educate the community, educate ourselves in understanding our value more and what we have to offer. And that brings me to anybody out there who's listening and you're like, yes, I'm ready to do it, and I want to get into management, and been doing direct services for years, and I'm ready to get into management. And for those of you who want to go into management and you need to do that self-assessment piece, and you need to develop your interpersonal skills and just get a better understanding of what employers are going to expect when you get into management, I highly, highly recommend that you take a look at my course through the University of Irvine's Continuing Education Department. I am doing a human services management course, and we touch base on all of this because, you know, if you've been in the field and you've been doing this work for a while, you know that you don't get a whole lot of management training. You don't get it at a nonprofit. You get it, you might give it in a county agency, but it's typically, outdated and inadequate. And if you're lucky enough to be working at a company where you do get it, it's usually very limited, and it's not applicable to our specific professions. So this course is about social work and those in the helping profession. So it is very specific, and I'm very excited about it. And you can find out more by you can go to the University of Irvine. You can go to their website and you can look at the Continuing Education Department. You can also go to my website and look at the management page, and that is under counseling. Yeah, no, courses. That's under my courses tab, and it'll take you to management, and then it has direct links on how you can learn more about the course and how you can also sign up and register to take it. I would love to have you in class. Also, and I would just love to have you join me next week for this podcast. We'll be talking more about the Helpers Hub and just how we all can move forward into the future doing work that we love.